Good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of Coffee in the Garden. As you can tell, this is not my garden, and this is not coffee, but we're going to roll with the title because it's melodic. Anyway, I'm not in the garden today for a couple reasons. Number one, it snowed like 5 inches just about a day and a half ago, and it is cold out there. Number two, right now I'm filming and it's the evening time, so if I was outside you wouldn't be able to see me. And the third reason is that we're going to be talking about chickens, and right now there are no chickens in my garden, so let's talk about it in the comfort of the home. And I've got my English breakfast here. English breakfast is good, but my favorite is Earl Grey, so if you're ever in the mood for sending little things my way, Earl Grey will definitely hit the spot. Anyway, we're going to have a very information-packed episode. I'm going to try and keep everything as brief as possible and keep it to kind of a beginner level. But it's going to be information-packed, so listen up and let's learn about some chickens. Seeing the little chicks in the feed stores and farm stores, and going and buying eggs at the grocery store and thinking about how you would love to have them fresh can really put owning chickens into your mind. How convenient would it be? Just go in the backyard and get your eggs and not have to run to the store every time you run out. Plus, how good are those farm-raised eggs with their nice orange yolks, not these pale yellowy things. And oh, how cute are the little chicks, and how funny are chickens and all that. And you know what? Honestly, yeah, all of that's true. But knowing where to begin can really help. So I was even organized and I wrote it down so that I wouldn't get too sidetracked. And I thought I'd tell you what we're going to be covering in this episode. We're going to talk about how to get chickens. We're going to talk about what chickens eat and drink. It's just water. What kind of housing chickens need. What kind of chickens do you want to get? Yes, there are different kinds of chickens. What about roosters? What's the deal with roosters? Do chickens get sick? What about hatching eggs? Incubator versus mama hen. Raising chicks. Broody hens, which is also with the hatching eggs and things like that. How do you integrate different ages if you have an established flock and then you want to add in some younger ones later? What if one of them dies? What if they get sick? How do you store eggs? And is it really worth it? Plus we have a myth or two and a couple fun facts about chickens scattered in there as well. So we're just going to go right down the list and try and hit every little bit that I can. Okay, how do we get chickens? Now, I'll tell you how we got chickens, and then I'll list the other ways that you can get chickens. My husband and I wanted to get chickens kind of already started for us. We didn't want to go through the hassle of raising chicks and maybe some of them dying and etc. So what we did is we found on Craigslist someone was selling pullets. So they were about 4 months old, white leghorn pullets, and it was only about an hour away from us. So we gave them a call and we said, hey, when can we pick up some? And this was a giant home run leghorn chicken business. It wasn't like a factory farm thing or anything like that. He just had a hobby of raising hundreds of white leghorns. So we went and we got 6, threw them in a dog crate in the back of the car and drove home and got them established in their little spot. So you can get pullets or hens, and we paid about $20 per chicken at that time. And that was worth it to us because then we didn't have to wait. I had just had a new baby. We were very busy. We were really jumping into the homestead stuff at the time, and we didn't want to wait. So you can get hens or pullets. If you're going to get hens, I recommend that you make sure that they're just a year or two, no older than that, otherwise it's not going to be worth your money. You can also get chicks that you can order them in the mail, but some of them have like a death rate, basically. They take a couple days after they hatch to get to you, and they put a heating pack in there and everything else like that, but really shipping live animals does have a slight issue with a few of them, not making it. It might be too cold, might be too hot, might be anything. So you can get chicks shipped to you, and most hatcheries are pretty good about doing everything they can to do it safely. You can also go get them in person at things like Tractor Supply, Blaine's Farm and Fleet, Tyson's, whatever kind of a feed store, farm store you have near you. Probably in the spring has chicks. I'm going to touch on this later, but you need to make sure you're getting the right kind of chick if that's what you're going for, because if you get a meat chicken and you want them to lay eggs, you are going to be very disappointed. So we'll touch on that when we get to like what kind of chicken we want. So you could get them older, you could get them as babies, or you can get hatching eggs. And you can put them in an incubator and hatch the eggs yourselves. Now, I will say that incubators, if you can find them secondhand and they're in good shape, totally worth the investment. We bought one for $50 and it was a secondhand, but it hatches like 3 or 4 dozen eggs. So we can really fill up the flock really well. Every 21 days we could have that going if we had the rooster. So what I did when we wanted to get more chickens and I didn't have a rooster, I have a friend who has an integrated flock of lots of different varieties, and she gave me a dozen hatching eggs for free. I offered to pay for them because she sells eggs too. She's like, go ahead, So instead of $2, I got them for free. And I hatched 12 eggs, and 11 of them actually hatched. 1 was a dud, and then we split the 11. So one of us had 5, one of us had 6. I gave, I think it was the 5 to a friend. Chicken math is a thing. You kind of forget how many chickens you have and how they got there. I don't know. So we incubated a batch of chicks, and now they're in our backyard laying eggs and being happy. There's a difference between straight run, which means you don't know if some of them are going to be roosters, and then the sexed chickens. If you really cannot have a rooster where you live, then sexed chicks is probably going to be your best bet if you want them young, or of course going with a pullet, because at that point you're pretty sure if it's a pullet or a cockerel. So those are the ways that you can get chickens. Okay. What do chickens eat? It might surprise you to find out that chickens at different stages of life and different genders and stuff have different dietary needs. But honestly, it's kind of like how puppies need puppy food and dogs need dog food, and different breeds need different kinds and things like that. But what you can do is kind of break it up into about 3 categories. When chickens are small, they need itty bitty food. It's called chick starter, and it usually comes in little crumbles, kind of like granola looking stuff. And the that's perfect for chicks. It doesn't have too much calcium, and it's small enough that they can eat it. Great stuff for chicks. The rest of your flock can eat it. If you have some left over and you want to throw it out there, it's not going to hurt them. But that's specifically designed for chicks. There's medicated and unmedicated, and you can choose. And honestly, there's a great debate that comes up, and nobody's right, nobody's wrong. Feed them whatever you want, as long as it's chick starter size and it doesn't have the added calcium that layer feed does. I'm going to try to put in like a picture here that I took at our farm store, and it'll show you all of the different chicken feed that's available. So you can see that there's a lot of different varieties, and for laying hens, what you want to do is you want to find a feed that says specifically for laying hens, okay? Because the laying hens need the extra calcium that is in layer feed, okay? I find personally that the pellets, which are longer, they're kind of like the brand cereal, the longer brand cereal you get in the store, kind of longer like that. It wastes less feed because the chickens don't scatter it all over as much as the crumbles. Layer feed does come in crumbles and pellets. If you have roosters in your flock, they do not use the calcium to make eggs, and therefore should not be having a layer feed that contains so much calcium that it can give their kidneys and stuff trouble and calcifying, make them croak. So you would be looking for something called all flock. It's basically designed for any kind of bird, any kind of poultry, basically. And for the laying hens, what you would do is get a calcium supplement. Usually oyster shell is sold for this. And that's what the hens would go and eat, and they know that they need it, so they'll just go and get it. The last thing that chickens need is grit, okay? If you have your chickens in a place where they can get naturally like sand and little rocks and stuff, then they will use a lot less grit. But if you're in a spot where they just don't have access to that, putting a little dish of grit, and it's actually sold as grit in, feed stores, and then they can just self-serve whenever they feel like they need it. Grit's important to the digestion because chickens don't chew. They swallow everything, and then their gizzard chews it up inside for them, and that's where the grit stays, so it can be all chewed up. Okay. Where do chickens live? What kind of structure do you need for a chicken? And anything else that you might consider in that. All right. We built our chicken coop out of scraps from around the property that were here when we moved here. Time to get a little drink of tea. That was a lot hotter than I thought it was. We built our chicken coop out of stuff that we had here already. There was a lot of wood scraps, bits of plywood. What our coop looks like is basically a 4x4x4 cube with a big back door on the back for us to collect eggs and a little door on the front for the chickens to get out into the run. Now, our coop, our little cubey coop, I wish I had a little cube around here that I could kind of show you. Anyway, our cubey coop is not right on the ground. It is set up higher, and then underneath there's like 2.5 feet of space here, and this is fenced underneath the coop, and then we have like a space that kind of goes around in a funny shape, kind of like a U shape, that's also fenced in about 3 feet high, and it has poultry netting on the top. So we do not go into the chicken run. It's short, it's knee high. But our chickens are very, very happy there. It takes up not near as much space as a full-sized walk-in chicken coop and run would take. And we have 11 chickens, and they are perfectly happy. They have 2 roosting bars at the top. Chickens need a place to roost, and they want it, here, you get to have Land Before Time explain to you how you want to run your roosting bars. You do not want to run your 2x4 roosting bars this way because it's painful on their feet. You want to run it this way so that they have a better grip and can kind of settle down on it. All right. So our chickens have 2 roosting bars that run across the top. I try not to allow the roosting bar to be above the nesting boxes because chickens poop when they sleep, and I don't want that to be all over the top of my nesting boxes. Now, how many nesting boxes do you need for chickens? Honestly, the answer is 1, because no matter how many chickens you have and no matter how many nesting boxes you have, they will all use the same one, or they will ignore it and go lay them somewhere else. They just do. If it makes you feel more comfortable, start with 2. You do not need to buy fancy nesting boxes. What we use is a rectangular kitty litter bucket that was here when we moved in, turned on its side, and the chickens just go in there. We have some straw in there as bedding, do their little egg stuff, and then they come on out and they're quite happy. And chickens don't break each other's eggs unless there's something weird going on, so that you don't have to worry about 1 egg per nesting box. We had 14 in there today because we had a few from last night. And the rest from today. So they were all just fine. And yeah. So what else do we need in a chicken's house? So you need to have, needs to be secure. So at night, you need to be able to latch up the chicken coop so that no critters can get in. Even small animals like weasels, if they can get in, they will kill your whole flock. So you need to have a nice secure place for them to be at night. During the daytime, the best way to keep your flock happy and healthy and safe is to get hardware cloth, and I believe I took a picture of that and I'll put that up here somewhere. But hardware cloth is a little bit more expensive than chicken wire, and we had chicken wire on the property, and so we're using chicken wire. I haven't seen weasels, and I haven't seen raccoons, so I think that we're just going to be just fine. Sorry, I think one of my kids is waking up, getting some water or something. So, but you want to have it all nice and protected for them. You don't want something to get in there when you're not around and slaughter your chickens, because animals are nuts. They won't just stop at one because they were hungry and they wanted to eat it. Any animal that works its way into a chicken coop is there to kill all of your chickens. It's a sport at that point for them. So protect them with the best fencing that you can afford. And if you can't afford great fencing, protect them with your presence, protect them with whatever you got. I'm pretty comfortable with my chickens having chicken wire fencing and a thick poultry netting up on the top. It's not that flimsy blow in the breeze stuff. It's like a plastic poultry netting type thing. And that keeps them pretty safe. We have them like wire bale tied and zip tied onto the edges, and it's great. Chickens don't need anything fancy. You do not have to pay $1,500 for a chicken coop that is prefabbed and painted like a cute little red and white barn. Chickens don't care. They just want a safe place where they can eat, sleep, and poop and lay eggs. So if you can do that for them, then you're good and solid. Cleaning out the chicken coop, a lot of people clean it out on a regular basis, like weekly or bi-weekly, and they put all fresh bedding in and take out all of the poop and stuff and compost it. Or you can do the deep bedding method, which is what I do. So twice a year or so is when I clean out the chicken coop. Basically, right before it starts to freeze and right after it stops freezing. And in between times, I just add kind of like it's so gross, but it's like a a poop and straw or poop and pine shaving lasagna in there. So basically, you just cover all of the nasties with another layer of straw. In my case, I did use pine shavings before, and that worked just fine as well. And then they'll coat that one, and then you put another layer, and then when it thaws out, you just scoop it all out into the wheelbarrow and dump it in the compost. I haven't had any problems with their feet or anything with that, and they seem pretty happy. And the extra decomposing manure that is in their chicken coop, which I should mention is lined on the bottom with linoleum, so it's easier and the wood's not rotting. It's easier to clean and the wood's not rotting. Anyway, the warmth from that actually keeps them a little bit warmer. You want to have a little bit of a vent, and up what we have for a vent is a window right at the top, the length of the coop, and only about a few inches tall, with screen stapled and secured very thoroughly around that. So they still get a breeze during the summer and fresh air during the winter, and it's very happy. So now we've talked about what kind of housing chickens need, right? Let's talk about what kind of chicken you want. There are many varieties of chicken. There's two main varieties, and those are egg laying and meat chickens. Meat chickens are the things that you buy in the grocery store that have gigantic breasts, and they're perfectly sedentary creatures, and you can raise those at home. One of the most common is Cornish cross, but those don't live past a few months old. They were bred to be harvested at a few months old. That's it. They will die of heart attacks, and they will not grow feathers in, and they're very different breed. If you are wanting egg layers, there are lots of different varieties, and you can do some of the research yourself, but some of the things that you want to consider is how many eggs they lay in a year. The highest laying eggs in a year breeds are like white leghorns and I think production reds I have, and a few others that they're hovering around 350 eggs a year. That's almost one every single day. And that's a very high production. And then you can get lower, 250, 200, and those are more of like, they're almost like more like a pet chicken. Mixed breeds, Easter eggers are not a breed. They are a mutt. So pay accordingly. They're fun and they're adorable, and my favorite chicken that I have is a Easter egger mutt that we hatched, and her name is Chipmunk, and she's adorable and hilarious and sweet. And the rest are psychos. But what kind of chicken you want is really going to depend on your climate, what your intentions are, whether you're doing meat or eggs, and if you have a desire for just a pet chicken. If you want a chicken that's just cute, go get you some silkies, dude, because they are just cute, but they are not very hardy. All right. What about roosters? Now here we're going to enter a little myth. Do you need roosters to get eggs? Do you need a man to have your period? No. All right. An egg in a hen is produced the same way an egg in a mammal would be produced, except of course it comes out as an egg, not as the release of a period or as a child. Just to be completely graphic there. If you don't need a man around to ovulate, then chickens don't need a rooster around to ovulate either. So you do not need a rooster in order to get an egg. You do need a rooster if you're going to get a fertilized egg, which could hatch into a chick if it is incubated at the proper temperature for the proper length of time. If you have a rooster and it is fertilizing your chickens, it is perfectly safe to eat your chicken's eggs. That is not going to start forming a chick unless it is held at like 100 and something or another degrees for like 21 days. You're good. All right. Another couple things to consider about roosters. They can be kind of mean. And they can be illegal to own in a lot of situations, like if you're in town. Please look up your city's codes and also chat with your neighbors. Even if you're allowed to have a rooster, chat with your neighbors. Be nice about it and be like, hey, I've got a rooster. If he gets to be too annoying, please let me know. I'm happy to do whatever we need to do in order to make it pleasant around here. Some roosters can be amazing. Benefits of having roosters, that your flock is better protected if you allow them to free range without that netting or fencing around them. Hawks are less likely to come down if you've got a rooster to protect them. And you have a self-perpetuating flock. You can continue to hatch those eggs without having to buy more chickens or more chicks or more eggs. All right. Do chickens get sick? Yes, they can get sick. They can have colds. They can have stomach issues. They can get skin infections. Basically anything that a human being can get or a dog or a cat can get, there is a chicken version of it. And you do need to be prepared for a few of these. So what I will do is I'll mention a few of these things, and if you would like to research them yourself in the interest of keeping my video to a reasonable amount of time, you can go and look up the specific illness for more information. Okay. So Coccidia is something that just lives in the earth, and it can affect your chickens. It can make them seem like generally like just sick, just like they don't feel well. So can Mareks, and Mareks is a disease that is very communicable in your flock. Those two are probably the worst ones because vets don't really work on chickens, and honestly, it's not really worth the financial draw to have a vet work on a chicken in those cases, and those are just really hard things. But they do have treatments that are over the counter that you can use to treat those. Another thing that you will probably hear about in the chicken world is Bumblefoot, which is basically chickens walk all over all sorts of crap. If they get a little cut in their pad, it can get infected and swell up. Now, if your chicken looks like it's in distress, absolutely manage that Bumblefoot. If it just looks like they have kind of an ingrown toenail feel to them and they look okay, what I've done in the past is just let it go. I keep an eye on them, and if they look like they're in pain, then I'll handle it, but usually it remedies itself. Maybe adding more clean bedding down so that they're not constantly stepping in too much crap, although chickens dig. They just do. They're gonna get their feet dirty. So Bumblefoot is something to look into, but it's not hugely serious. Other things that chickens can get are respiratory illnesses like colds, and then avian flu, I guess, is going around. So no visitor chickens. Keep your flock safe. But chickens can get colds, and they will sneeze, and they will cough, and it will be the funniest thing that you've ever seen in your life, because you're like, I didn't know a chicken could sneeze or cough. But there it is. Okay. Hens can get egg bound. Basically, an egg is too large to pass through the tract, and this one's a little touchy. Look it up on your own. But check out egg bound, different ways to deal with chickens being egg bound, etc. Have my chickens gotten sick? No, not really. Had a couple cases of Bumblefoot, and they healed themselves, and a couple sneezes and coughs, and then they healed themselves, and we've moved on, and life is great. But you do want to be prepared. I'll get to this one when we go what if one dies, because animals do die sometimes. All right, hatching eggs. I mentioned earlier that we got a secondhand um, incubator for $50, but it was a really good one. And I really like it. It's a really good quality one. I'll try and get a picture and so I can show you. I'll put it over here. And we hatched our eggs in it, and it was adorable. And I'll splice in a little video of some of our little hatching eggs here. And it was a lot of fun, great learning for the kids. It's kind of detailed. That would be kind of a video in and of itself. You need to maintain heat and humidity. You need to be prepared to have them very happy for 21 days, rotating frequently. If you live in a place where power outages are the norm during certain seasons, I would avoid trying to hatch using an incubator during those times, because if the power goes out and you can't keep them warm enough, or you can't keep them rotating or humid enough, then you're going to have a very high failure rate. So consider that when you're hatching eggs. Make sure it's not during hurricane season or blizzard seasons or whatever. Okay? All right. Much cooler now. On the same topic, before we get into raising chicks, is broody hens. Sometimes hens can go broody, which basically means they got baby fever and they're like, hey, I want to hatch some eggs. I don't want to be all about this loose single life anymore. I'm ready to sit down, relax, take a 3-week sit down and not move, except to get up, take the biggest dump of my life, eat and drink, and go back to my eggs. And that's it. Which, if you want chicks, fantastic. All the power to you, girl. But if you're in it for the eggs, or like you don't have the rooster, there's no point in it, then you're going to have to consider breaking the broody chicken. And the short version is you have to cool her down. There's a couple methods. Sometimes people set the chicken in cool water for half an hour at a time and let her run, and then put her back in however many times. Some people put them in a cage that has just the grate on the bottom so it can cool their bum off. Some people just keep throwing them out of the nesting box. But broody hens can be kind of mean, so wear some gloves when you do that. If a broody hen keeps going and keeps going and keeps going and doesn't have any eggs that are fertilized, you could get some eggs and stick them under her and see if she'll hatch them out and see if that breaks her broody. But keeping them healthy through the broody period, or learning how to break a broody hen, is a really important part of chicken ownership. So make sure you look into that a little further before you go out to Tractor Supply. All right, raising chicks. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get a picture of this or not. If I do, I'll try to put it up somewhere over here. But how we set up a brooder for our chicks is we actually used a pack and play that was no longer fit for kids to be using. It was a secondhand pack and play someone was throwing out. And so I opened up the pack and play, and then I put sheet plastic inside of it, and just kind of clamped that down, laid pine shavings, not the thin stuff, the kind of like, well, I mean, it's thin, but it's not tiny. It's not like grains, because chicks will eat it. Pine shavings in the bottom, and you get a little chick water and feeder, and I have pictures of little things that go on the bottoms of mason jars. And you get your chick starter, and you get your water, and you want to get some probiotics, and I got a picture of probiotics over here. Electrolytes. They do have probiotics too, but electrolytes. And just in case your chicks need that extra boost, having some electrolytes on hand is a good idea. You're also going to want a heat source. You can either do a heat lamp or this little brooding warming plate that we use. And I like this because it's safer, and it's more like being under a mama chicken because they kind of duck under there. And I didn't have to worry about my kids knocking it over and burning my house down. It was more expensive than the heat lamp, but it was worth it to me to have that security of not worrying about something burning my house down. Your chicks are going to outgrow their brooder quite quickly, so you want to make sure that they are hatched or purchased so that they can go outside into their own little coop or the coop when the weather is appropriate. Now, there is a chart online. I'll see if I can find it, and maybe I'll link it or something. Otherwise, feel free to look it up yourself, and it says just when can my chicks go outside, and it tells you, like, if they're 5 weeks old, they can go out when it's 95 degrees all the time, or when they're 12 weeks old, it's this. I've got the days and the times and the temperatures mixed up, but it'll tell you what temperature it can be. And as the chickens get older, the temperature goes down so that they can be outside sooner, if it's warm enough. All right. So on that note, let's talk about integrating different ages. We at one point had 3 different ages of chickens. And I mean, we still technically do, but because now they're all laying, they're all hens, they're all equals. But we had our original white leghorns. We only had 5 at that point because one had an accident. She got out. Wasn't pretty. All right, so we had 5 of our leghorns, and then we had 5 chickens that we hatched, and then we got 3 more from a friend. And so we had 3 different ages that we had to integrate slowly. You want the chickens to be about the same size as each other before you start integrating them. So our second group, we wanted them to be almost the same size as the hens that were laying. One of our second group ended up being a rooster, which I kind of think helped because he kind of took the brunt of the fighting from the nasty old mean white hens. It evened it out a little bit. No, we're not allowed to have roosters here, but don't worry, we'll get to that in What If One Dies. So we you have to get them close in age. Otherwise, the older ones will peck the other ones to death, and that'll be it. Having a space where the slightly younger ones can fit and the older ones can't can help them to escape and get to a safe place. You may also consider having 2 or 3 different feeding and watering stations at that time so that the young ones who are low on the pecking order, and yes, that is where that phrase came from, can still go get their food and their water, just because, mean old boss ladies are hogging all the water up there. Okay. And then we had to do that again with the next group. That time what we did is we actually put a barricade in between part of it, and I put a little upside down tote bin for the little guys to live in, and they could do a little bit of the run over here. And then there was a partition, and they could see the other chickens doing their chicken thing. And then slowly I was just like, okay, I'm going to take the partition off, but the little guys can still go hang out in their little spot, and the older guys can go in theirs. And eventually they integrated, they fought their pecking order out, and everybody is alive except for the one, but that had nothing to do with pecking order, and everything to do with the fact that he is a rooster. So that actually brings us to what if one dies? I have had a grand total of 3 chickens die. we had the first one escape, and then this is a horrible story. So, I don't know. Should I tell it? All right, I'll tell the gentle side. Well, I had one chicken escape, and I thought that it had been taken off by an owl because I saw footprint, no footprint. And it was almost dark, and it was winter, and it was in the snow. And I'm like, that's weird. And so I looked, and I looked, and I looked. I looked in our shed that was really like awful, and I couldn't find it. I'm like, I'm sorry, kids. An owl must have gotten one of our chickens. We still have 5. It's okay. Everyone was sad. It turned out okay. And then the next year, we decided to clean out the shed. We found a chicken. My kids still don't know, so if you know me in person, please don't tell my kids. Turns out while I was looking for the chicken and looking in the shed to see if she had gotten in there, she had gone underneath some of the stuff that I was stepping on, and had a nice quick squishy death that way. So what do you do with a chicken in that case? A petrified 1-year-old chicken? Bag her up and throw her in the trash. That's right. What do you do if a different chicken dies? So we also had a baby chick die. We had one of the chicks that we hatched did not do well. She was very poorly, and we tried everything we could with her. We gave her electrolytes. I held her up here, kept her nice and warm, hand fed her, hand watered her and everything, and she just didn't do well. And so we put her back with her little sisters and stuff, and in the morning she had passed. And it was very sad because that was our kids' first knowledgeable loss of a chicken, and they were very sad. So we went out and we just buried the little chick out near a tree. All right. Our third situation, and this one annoys me because we had another chick that was also having a little bit of a hard time. And so I really took care of him too. It turned out to be a him. This was our rooster, and I named him Slate because he had gray legs. And he was the prettiest rooster you've ever seen. Black iridescent feathers and then like orange ones, and he was a mutt. He was a mix. He was an Easter egger. And he was so gorgeous. But apparently what had happened to him, we came home one day and Aaron, my husband, went to check on them, and he's like, Slate's dead. And I'm like, are you sure? He's like, oh, he's like stiff. He's like, there is nothing. So you might have a question. Can you eat a chicken that you find that just died? No. You don't know how long ago they died and of what. Don't risk it. There's no point to it. I mean, if your dog snaps its neck and then you go out there, sure. But if you found it dead, no. So poor old Slate. I let the kids take a feather from him to, remember him by, and then we buried him over by the grapevine. But this solved our rooster problem. And why did he die? So when roosters come into maturity, their hormones surge so quickly that they can actually have a heart attack from, we're going to keep it kid friendly, from those hormones. And so he had just come into his manhood and had a heart attack. And so at least he died doing what he loved. So if one dies, you can bag it up, put it in the trash, or bury it on your property. And if you're going to bury it further away from the coop, so that predators that may come to dig it up aren't going to see your chickens as the live version. All right. We're going to talk about egg storage. We're going to talk about, is it worth it? And then I'm going to tell you a fun fact about chickens. All right. Egg storage. Where do we keep our eggs? You can expect your chickens, if they're high producing chickens, to lay about 1 egg a day during most of the year. They will have some times when they will not be laying eggs, or they will be laying fewer eggs. Sometimes the winter plays a part in that, and sometimes their molting season, which I will go ahead and touch on in a moment, plays a part in that too. But generally speaking, you can expect an egg a day from each of your chickens. So that means for us, we have 11 chickens. We may get 11 eggs in a day. We may get, 9 or 10. And I need to have a spot for that. So eggs that have been freshly laid and not been washed or gotten wet, so don't set them in the snow. Don't rinse them under the hose. If they're good, you can just put them on the counter, and that's good enough. If you wash them, then you need to put them in the refrigerator. On the counter, they can last weeks. And if you're questioning it, crack it into a bowl before you use it. There you go. Quick note about molting. Molting is when chickens lose their feathers and grow new ones. This usually happens about once a year, but the timing of it varies greatly. So don't be surprised when you see a bald chicken. Is it worth it? Absolutely. Especially if you can do it budget friendly, it makes it absolutely worth it. And it teaches you so much about animals and about life and about all that stuff. But it also, if you feed them scraps and all that, in addition to chicken feed, which you totally can, we pay less to have our chickens than we would to go buy as many eggs. And especially if I was going to buy the natural, farm fresh, organic, etc. eggs. I actually spend less than I would on the standard been around for 2 months in a refrigerator egg at the grocery store. So it is absolutely worth it. If you have the time, if you have the place, if you have the finances to get it started, it's absolutely worth it. Definitely go for it. And I'm going to end this by giving you a fun fact about chickens. Did you know that a chicken's ears, the color and general appearance of their ears, can correlate to egg color? Yes, chickens with white earlobes will tend to lay white eggs. Chickens with reddish earlobes will tend to lay brownish eggs. And chickens with like floofy little ears and also floofy cheeks will tend to lay like fun colored, light brown or pink or blue or greenish and things like that. So there's your fun fact. And thanks for coming along with me, even though we weren't in the garden this week. Hopefully the weather improves and I can be in the garden next week. And we can talk about something fun then too. All right. God bless you all. Love you. See you next week. Come see me on Instagram or Facebook. Message me if you'd like to chat, if you have any questions, etc.